Hi friends, my name is DJ and welcome to the third week in Thrive. This is a series of spiritual conversations teaching our souls to thrive and not just survive. So this week we're going to talk about hurry and the antidote of taking space. Dallas Willard said this about hurry. Hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. It reminds me of a story. A few months ago, I was doing a remodel project for my laundry room. And I got to the point where I was almost done and I was just so ready to be done. You with me on projects? You know, you get to the place where you're just like, whatever, just make it go away. I was there and I had to switch the water lines from the old to the new. I thought I'd turn the water off, but then again, did I? I couldn't remember, but I was in such a hurry. Instead of double checking it, I just went for it and found out very quickly the water lines were not off. All of a sudden, water at 100 PSI was spraying right out at my chest. And when I moved straight out into the bathroom, it was filling up like a flood in my house. I quickly tried to, push it with my hand and I couldn't stop it. I started yelling to my family, turn off the water. Of course, my wife and two girls, they didn't know what to do. So I ran downstairs, turned off the water mains, was soaking wet, and I came upstairs, and the best part was my two girls were up on our kitchen island. And I said, what are you guys doing? And they said, it's a flood. We had to get to the high ground. My hurry had caused all kinds of effects that I did not intend. And I think this is actually a really good example of our spiritual lives. In our lives, we are so busy, we're so distracted, we're in such a hurry. I wonder what we might be really missing out on. So first, let's get to the bottom of why are we in such a hurry? Now we're going to go back to Ecclesiastes this week, chapter 3. The preacher is the main character and he's teaching us about Hevel, which is smoke. What is the things that we live for in life that are smoke? Here's what he says in chapter 3. There's an opportune time to do things, a right time for everything on the earth, a right time for birth and another for death, a right time to plant and another to reap, a right time to cry and another to laugh, a right time to lament and another to cheer, a right time to embrace and another to part. We'll call that social distancing. A right time to hold on and another to let go. Now, this is just an excerpt of the 28 seasons that the preacher tells us about. Now, what I want us to do for a little bit here is think of each season as a door. Now imagine that as you step through life, you come to a series of doors and you never quite know which door you're opening. That's how our seasons are. So let's say you open a season and you realize it's a season of laughter. Oh, I love that one. It's like we graded in our souls. A+, I love laughter. We open another one. Oh, it's one for cheer. I love those. Open another one, vacation. A++. I mean, that's what I live for. But then we open another one and we see cry. Oh, our souls recoil a little bit and we definitely rate that more like a C. Or we open another one and it's a lamenting season. That's a D. What about the season of death? How do you feel about the season of dealing with death? Man, our souls start to say F. Definitely an F. See, your soul likes happy things, but at its core, it's built to be able to withstand all things. But our culture and the way we've been trained is basically to avoid and try to get to the best seasons as often as possible. So what do? Here's what I think we do. Two things. We distract ourselves and we hurry. This is the modern spiritual way of dealing with things that we don't like, seasons, doors that we don't like. Let's talk about these two things, hurry and distraction. First, Hurry. Why are we in such a hurry? You know what the standard response to the greeting, "How are you doing?" is? It's good, but busy. Good, but busy. We're all good, and we're all busy. Since when is being busy such a good thing? It's like we all judge ourselves based on how busy we are. The busier we are, the better we are. I've been reading a book recently called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. And this is what he says about our souls and hurry. Many of us live lives with a low-grade fatigue and chronic anxiety that rarely, if ever, goes away. We careen through our days at breakneck speed and wonder where God is in the fray. The reality is most of us are just too busy to live an emotionally healthy and spiritually vibrant life. Hurry is incompatible with the way of Jesus. And love, joy, and peace that form the nucleus of Jesus' kingdom are all impossible at a life of speed. What is hurry costing us? What is busyness costing us? I think it's costing us spiritual depth and life. The second way that our soul deals with seasons that we just don't like is distraction. It's amazing how distracted we are as a society. It's like we're addicted to being distracted. That is, out of the current moment, trying to find another moment or another thought or another idea that make us feel better. Did you know the average iPhone user touches his or her phone 2,716 times per day? That's absurd. Have you ever looked at your iPhone to see how much you use your iPhone in a day? It's outrageous. And what's the cost? Ronald Rolheiser says this: today, a number of historical circumstances are blindly flowing together and accidentally conspiring to produce a climate within which is difficult, not just to think about God or pray, but simply to have any interior depth whatsoever. We are distracting ourselves into spiritual oblivion. Pathological busyness, distraction, and restlessness are major blocks today within our spiritual lives. I want to ask you a question. Does pathological busyness sound like Jesus to you? Would you think of his life and what draws you to his teachings and his way of life? Is it restlessness and intense, even pathological busyness? No, I don't think so. See, John Mark Comer gets to the root of all this when he says, what you give your attention to is the person you become. To put it another way, the mind is the portal to the soul, and what you fill your mind with will shape the trajectory of your character. In the end, your life is no more than the sum of what you give your attention to. Here's the point. Are we giving ourselves to the things that matter most? Here's an analogy. A couple days ago, I was playing a game with Lucy, and I went to check my phone, and she does this often to me, by the way. Lucy's my 7-year-old. And I picked up my phone, and she said, "Dad, what's more important? Is it your phone or your daughter?" And she gave me this little grin. I mean, how can I respond to that? I've got to say, well, of course my daughter. I said, "Of course you, honey." And she said, "Then put down the phone and play the game with me." I actually like that. She's holding me accountable and my soul accountable to what really matters. Here's the question. Is there something you and I can do that can hold us accountable to be the kind of people we want to be, to deal with distraction and hurry in our life? And the answer is a resounding yes. Today I want to teach you about the rhythm of space. That is our third rhythm to thrive. Now, what I'm calling space could also be called silence or solitude, but what it is, it's removing hurry and distraction and connecting to God and the moment before us. Walter Adams said, "To walk with Jesus is to walk a slow, unhurried pace. Hurry is the death of prayer, and only impedes and spoils our work. It never advances it. Let's think about Jesus for a second and think about the way he lived. I want you to imagine with me Jesus being in a hurry. I want you to imagine Jesus with a smartphone disconnecting from the conversation he's in to see how many Instagram likes he got on his recent post. I want you to imagine with me for a second Jesus taking a phone call in the middle of a healing. He just wouldn't do that. Jesus walked with a slow pace, and he even made it intentional to go out into the wilderness and spend time with God. In one of the most interesting instances of this in Matthew 1, we see Jesus just after being baptized going into the wilderness. Matthew 4:1 says, "Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil." Now, I find this really interesting because when I think of the wilderness, I think of the place that we would be at our weakness. But this is where Jesus is so different. Jesus demonstrates that in the wilderness, he was the strongest because it was the place he was most connected with God, his Father. This word for wilderness is eremos. Can you say that? Eremos. And the way to translate it is wilderness, like you would think of, a desolate place. But it's also an unpopulated place, and specifically an expressed lack of population of people. We find Jesus consistently getting away from the hustle and the bustle and the noise of society, even the first century society, and seeking solitude with God, quiet with God. You know, a few years ago when I had the chance to go to Israel, I was shocked to find that the wilderness that Jesus would go to in the Galilean country was beautiful. It's a country that's full of all kinds of fruit trees, and it's these sweeping hills with beautiful lakes. And I could just imagine Jesus going to the same kind of places that I like going to. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been to a wilderness area, a place where there's just not a lot of noise and people? What did your soul feel in that place? What did it feel like to be disconnected? At some level, I think we all long for those moments away. And Jesus demonstrated this. Listen to what Luke says about Jesus in Luke 5:16. But Jesus often withdrew to the wilderness for prayer. You know, 6 years ago, I started a journey of withdrawing to the wilderness for prayer. It's something that I'd never really considered in my spiritual life. And it was through a ministry called Rhythm in 20. And you know what? They told the story better than I could right now. So why don't you watch this video and hear a little bit more into my life about how I started to experience space. So I'm here in Iceland 6 years after I started my rhythm journey, and I could not have imagined like how far and how much would happen in the last 6 years. 6 years ago, my wife and I moved to Durango, Colorado to plant a church. We were ready to charge the hill and reach people for Jesus. We knew it was going to be hard, but what we didn't realize was just how hard it was going to be. There was this rigorous testing we went through that actually uncovered that down deep, I was going to really thrive at the newness of church planting, but really struggle with the endurance of church planting. And they actually told me, unless some things change, you're going to really struggle to deal with all of the tension and pressure of ministry. The way I lived life was, I would literally pour out the entire cup, whatever was in it. I would pour it out until there was nothing, and then I would crash, and then I would wait, and it would slowly recharge, and then I would pour it out again. I realize now I was literally stepping into a life that I couldn't sustain. At the same time, we found out about Rhythm in 20, and a friend and I decided to jump in. So within a month of going to Colorado to plant the church, Here we are at Rhythm in 20, just like learning how to have space balance and endure a call, and yet at the same time, how to be radical in the way that we pursue what God has called us to do. You're with 20 other guys who are all saying, we want the same thing. You know, we want to make a difference, but we realized it happens with this long, steady, persistent, rooted intensity. And that's what I was longing for, going to Rhythm. That's what I've just been longing for in my life. Through the Rhythm journey, Tim and the crew literally taught me how to have space. I think what's happened more than anything has been a course correction in terms of how I see myself and how I pursue the meaning and purpose and beauty of God. It has birthed a lot of the backbone that I've needed to be able to sustain and to continue to sustain where God has me. It is so hard to sustain that. Anybody can do it for a weekend. Anybody can do it for a month, But to do that for a year and then let a year turn into a decade and then a decade to turn into generation. We need so much more than just passion. Going through the Rhythm journey taught me how to bring in this other piece of finding space and connecting with God to the point that I really believe now that I can sustain the calling that God has for me. Man, I tell you what, I would not be the person I am today without the practice of space. It has taught me how to get away from the busyness of life and find God. And this is where the preacher gets in Ecclesiastes 3. In verse 12, he says, "So I concluded there's nothing better than to be happy and to enjoy ourselves as long as we can. And people should eat and drink and enjoy the fruits of their labor, for these are the gifts from God." What is the gifts from God? I think it's slowing down and enjoying what we have before us. What do you have before you right now? On the other side of this screen that you're looking at, do you have a house? Do you have kids, a family? Do you have health? Do you have good food to eat? Do you have good wine to enjoy and great experiences to go after? In each moment, God has given us enough. I truly believe that. And the practice of space, if we train our souls to recognize it, gives us a connection straight to God. So here's the practicals that I want to give you that you might start thinking about practicing. Now, we've called these things rhythms because they beat like a drum. And when we use them like a drum, boom, 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 boom in our life, and we don't skip a beat, we start to train our souls to find the life that comes from the water of God. So let's think of space, the practice of space in terms of our day, our week, our month, and our year. First, our day. Here's my encouragement to you to start. Make a time log of your week. Just for 1 week, starting today, write down all of the things you do in a little log. And at the end of the week, see how much hurry and distraction is a part of your life. Here's the next practical. Over a week, plan a time once a week to just slow down and shut off the noise. Each week, my family and I, we turn off our phones and we spend a day of rest. We call it our Sabbath. We usually practice it on Sunday, and we just sit in our pajamas and we do things that are life-giving, slowing down, recognizing God in the moment. Could you find some time this week to schedule time where all hurry and distractions will go bye-bye so that you can connect with God? What about for a month? Here's what I do. Once a month, I take a whole day and I get away. I turn my phone on airplane mode or just don't take it at all. And I usually go into the wilderness as long as I can handle it based on whatever season of year it is. And when I do this, I just try to unplug and plug into God. I find myself unraveling in my mind of all the things that I feel like I should be doing. And somewhere in the middle of that day, I reach a groove where I'm just connecting with God and I'm slowing down. What about once a year? What if once a year you took an extended vacation? And on that vacation, what if instead of speeding up and doing a bunch of exciting things, for this vacation, what if you slowed down and disconnected from all the news and the noise and the media in your life and just were being, just allowed yourself to be? I think if we start to practice space in our life, it transforms how we live. Now, I want to go back to the beginning story that I told you about my water line shooting all over my house. Now, what if I learned from that situation? What if next time I did a project, instead of rushing and just wanting to get done and being in that moment of like, I just need to finish, what if instead I learned from that moment and the disaster that incurred? And what if I did slow down and make sure that I did it all right? I think it would transform how I do projects. And in many ways, I would just get way better at projects. In the same way, you and I can learn from our hurry and busyness. We can learn from what the cost of all our distractions are in our life. And we can change. Friends, you and I can change. This is the pathway to thriving in our spiritual life. We don't want to be busy and rush. We want to evaluate everything in our life and ask, how can we get closer to the pace and the life, the full and free life of Jesus? So as we close, would you be willing to change your lifestyle to find God in every moment? I mean, what if we all did this as a church family? What would happen? What would be the effects of a bunch of people who slowed down and were really engaged with God, listening to Him? What if instead of getting spiritual nuggets from podcasts and sermons and books, what if we got spiritual giant rocks from God the Father Himself in our daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly practices of silence and solitude? Friends, it'd be a game changer for us, a game changer. And there would be so much freedom and so much life in our community that I would love to see what that looked like. So let's take this seriously. Let's look into it in a new way, moving forward from here. Thanks for listening. God bless you.